Joining me is independent political analyst Aidan Smith for more on this. Thanks for your time. Well, does anything surprise you? What do you take out of the result we've seen so far this afternoon Australian time, but of course evening in Iowa?
I think it's affirmatively clear to the vast majority of people watching that this caucus has pretty much proven that stands a Hail Mary in political terms of that we can't even envision. Donald Trump is on track to definitely be the nominee, which a year ago, back when DeSantis was polling much better, looked like it was actually, there were question marks around it. The only remaining thing is the New Hampshire primary. If Nikki Haley does come out with an upset, you might see media headlines in mainstream media around Trump potentially losing the nomination. You might see that picking up some steam. But irrespective of that, it's very clear that Trump is not just in pole position to win the nomination, but is basically the de facto nominee as it stands.
The one interesting element to that when you allude to Nikki Haley is a lot of the commentary has become, okay, we assume Donald Trump wins the nomination. Who comes second this time more than other times matters because there could be an issue where he can't run because of various legal issues. Is there a chance that people get so caught up in who's coming second that people that might have voted for Trump vote for Nikki Haley, or is he rusted on support big enough that even if that happens, it won't affect him being first?
I'm inclined to think that the latter. I think that Trump probably has the most durable base of support of probably any politician in modern American history, given what we've seen the last three cycles. I think the most interesting part about who comes in second is that, as far as I can tell, DeSantis has really burned his bridge with the Trump team. So even if he comes in second in New Hampshire, that probably won't mean anything for him going forward. If Nikki Haley does come in second, or she ends up pulling off an upset, her name might actually be floated for vice president, which, over the past year and a half, despite Haley and Trump definitely not always getting along and being from different wings of the party, her name has always been mentioned as a possible running mate just because she clears a lot of the boxes that Trump might want to reach across in order to expand his base, i.e., female, generally considered more moderate in public perception, foreign policy expertise and whatnot. So I think the main thing is that Haley's performance really will just determine whether she has a shot at being vice president or not.
Yeah, and I guess, is there an element that Donald Trump knows that as much as he'll romp in the Republican nomination and probably slight favourite to win the presidential race as well, that it's not a foregone conclusion, that he could still prove not popular enough within the broader Republican movement, that he might need someone like a Nikki Haley because he didn't have his usual barbs that he sometimes does for people he's defeated there. Yes, there was a sly shot at, let's see who comes second here. But he said they've done a good job. I mean, there was an element there of a conciliatory Donald Trump.
No, I definitely agree with that read on it as well. And when I was watching the press conference, I was also taking note of how even in, unlike a lot of usual Trump fashion, Trump didn't really take a point of, poking fun at the Republican runners up. Obviously, most of that speech was devoted to criticizing the incumbent president and trying to reassert himself as the face of the GOP. And among Haley, her main support base, less so her voters and more so people in media or, civil society, NGOs who support her, are generally people kind of aligned with what we think of as the Bush era Republican Party, the neoconservative movement, generally different on foreign policy than what Trump promises. So I think that absolutely Trump would benefit from having Haley firmly on his side going into the general election to try and ease concerns that people in that camp might have around Trump and to go in with the united Republican movement going into November.
As for hearing some of the points Donald Trump hit on there as a prelude to everything that will lead up now to November, keep building the wall, make America great again. So some sort of repeat elements of it. We do have as well some of the states he swept back in, of course, in 2016. Again, vulnerable in the sense that they won't be feeling better off over the last few years. But if we see the economic turnaround continue, is that his biggest roadblock, if you like? That if people don't feel like America's broken, that unemployment stayed really low, that inflation is all but settled, there's less to be unhappy about and go to the radical solution that Donald Trump basically says he is?
100%. And, something I do think about is that polling in the Biden camp, obviously, Democrats should be very concerned given Biden's poll numbers. But I think the thing looking out at current polling is that America is a super polarized country. Both candidates have pretty high unfavorable numbers. And that the main thing that's going to determine the course of the election won't really be the debates or necessarily, developments in the campaign in July or August or September. It's really going to be in that last month because we're almost at a 50-50 standstill. And if we see if economic recovery and the soft landing, so to speak, continues, inflation eases, there's no major geopolitical crisis arises, that's probably a point in Biden's favor. But if we do see inflation go through the roof in the months leading up to November, that is going to definitely cause Trump to be the likely victor, I think.
Yeah, no, I think that's certain. Look, it popped up in December. We might get your reaction to this because just breaking news coming in, Aidan, Vivek Ramaswamy has suspended his campaign. He's throwing his support behind Donald Trump. Now, we know this happens in primaries. This is pretty early on, though. What do you make of this? Obviously, he was coming fourth in this primary, but already he's saying, I'm out, supporting Donald Trump.
Yeah, definitely with Ramaswamy, he was really the surprise candidate of the cycle. In a lot of Republican primaries in the past, Trump most famously, but in the past, you had unsuccessful but ultimately impactful Republican candidates who weren't office holders. Ramaswamy is a businessman. You saw this in 2012 with someone like Herman Cain, someone from outside the political field who really did make a mark anyhow and kind of assert their positions as, future leaders in the GOP. Ramaswamy in the debates that Trump wasn't in almost acted like a proxy for Trump in a certain sense, was definitely loyal to the president in a way that, so I definitely see Ramaswamy, going full out and endorsing Trump off the bat. Definitely sees himself as a future leader in the Trump wing of the GOP and probably wants to capitalize off of that, I think.